Okay, let me, we now move into the second segment of section 2 of our syllabus outline. And please note the section overall is called The Interpretive Dimension of the Social Sciences Revisited. So we, in a sense, moved first into a robust conception of interpretive social science, which has some, I think, interesting proportions through the work of Charles Taylor. And I've given you extended lectures on that theme, right? But there was one closing comment that I offered at the fag end of the treatment of Charles Taylor, when I was actually raising some final questions about his enterprise as a whole, there was one large ground that I was indicating towards, which lays the basis for, as I was pointing out, some of the considerations that follow in this set of lectures. And let me remind you of that question. Okay, what critical windows into causality, I'd raised this question: what windows into causality over and above meaning and interpretation can hermeneutical accounts provide, right? To rephrase that question, are hermeneutical accounts so overly descriptive and particularistic that they compromise languages of causality that need also addressing from within social science, right? And I think what I'm going to say in PPT 5 is largely an attempt to traverse the ground of that set of questions, right? Etc. Okay. Of course, there are also some other motivations that underlie PPT 5 and the theme of reasons and causes on the one hand, and the idea of mechanisms on the other, right? And there are two segments to this, right? But I think it's important to address these themes. I mean, there is a sense in which you can address these themes in themselves, right? But I think more importantly, it's also important to think the themes that I'm going to introduce you to in the light of the kind of questions that have informed our earlier traversal, right? So that's why in my soon after I disclose some of the key terms of my lecture in this PPT, I move into the context and background, and I invoke some aspects of our discussions that we have had till now, and I want to rehearse that ground, right, before I move into the specific contents of this part of our syllabus outline, right, etc. Now, to quickly recall, one key assumption or argument, right, that informed our previous sub-theme, which was part of PPT 4, was this, and I say this in the PPT that I'm now working through, that even as contextualized self-interpretations and intentions of subjects form a part of the subject matter of the social sciences, right? So social sciences have to handle the self-interpretations and actions and intentions of actors and human subjects. A key element of our argument in the previous PPT was there is more to social scientific understanding and explanation than just being reducible to that subject matter, right? Namely, the contextualized self-interpretations and intentions of subjects and so on, right, etc. And of course, if that argument is well taken, and if that underlying assumption is well thought through, then there is something more that we are demanding as part of our engagement with the interpretive dimension of the social sciences, right? And we have had one set of claims coming from Taylor, Charles Taylor, to outline that more than element that attaches to the focus on meaning and interpretation and so on, right? Now, I think for the purposes of this set of lectures, I want to implicate another ground over and above that which has already been indicated through Charles Taylor when he tries to outline and revisit some of the assumptions under which the interpretive method in the social sciences is being articulated, right? As I'm trying to formulate it, quite apart from what Taylor does, is that if that assumption and an argument that underlay PPT4 is accepted, then there is a more specific question that we should engage with, right? Incidentally, this more specific question that will engage us is something that has formed the basis of further developments in the philosophy of social sciences. And if you want to get a sense of that, you have to read the Risjord and Roth readings that have circulated to you, right, etc. Right? But the more specific question that comes up in the light of the assumptions and arguments anchoring PPT4 is this: that can we come up with an approach to explanation and understanding in the social sciences which incorporates an equal emphasis on both the intentional and non-intentional dimensions of social phenomena, right, etc. So the underlying presupposition here is that a lot of hermeneutical accounts do give us a window into the intentional aspects of social phenomena, but somewhere along the way, there is a possibility that hermeneutical accounts may fall short in addressing the non-intentional dimensions of social phenomena, right, etc. That's why the question that we are going to engage with in this PPT, namely, can we come up with an approach to explanation and understanding in the social sciences that incorporates an equal emphasis on the intentional side of phenomena and the non-intentional side of phenomena, right? And I can even give a further caveat that in trying to formulate an approach to social science which incorporates both the intentional and non-intentional dimension, we also are trying to avoid the descriptive or particularistic solution which often underlies interpretive social science, right? That's why I think it's important to us, incidentally, the question that I'm raising for you is not a question that is new. In fact, you can actually read this into one of the classical sociologists that you have studied, Max Weber, because Weber was clear that while interpretation of intention is important for social sciences, it's not the last word, as he put it, in social science methodology, right, etc. So in fact, that's why in many of his, if you read his book Economy and Society, where he outlines his idea of interpretative sociology, he actually tries to point out that sociology is a form of interpretative explanation, right? And as a form of interpretative explanation, it addresses both adequacy at the level of meaning, intention, motives of actors, and also at the level of cause, etc. And that's why I'm saying the question that we are raising is not necessarily a new question. You can actually read it back into one of the pioneers of classical sociology, namely Max Weber, right? But let me not give you that historical background. I mean, let's not preoccupy ourselves with that historicization. Let's get head on with this question of can we formulate an approach to social sciences, to explanation and understanding in social sciences, which incorporates an equal emphasis on both the intentional and non-intentional aspects of phenomena, while avoiding an excessively descriptive or particularistic solution as one may read into certain forms of interpretive social science. Okay, now, and I think there are certain requirements for such a perspective to flourish, which incorporates an equal emphasis on the intentional and non-intentional aspects of social phenomena, etc. I mean, for a quick clarification, somebody might have some doubt. What is this non-intentional aspect? Right? Somebody might have this doubt. I mean, non-intentional means that something which influences action, which influences how people behave or act, which is not within their grasp, broadly. So that's why it's called non-intentional. So, for instance, we can implicate the concept of causality with a focus on the non-intentional dimension, right? Although there are many times certain confusions where many times you also read intention as cause, motive as cause, meanings as cause, the meanings that people give as cause. That's why some of the ground of this set of lectures is important, because it reminds us there is a distinction possible between reasons for acting that actors state, right, and the causes of action, etc., right, and so on, right. So that's an element we will be exploring in this in the context of these lectures. And there is also an additional idea that we will be exploring, namely the idea of causal mechanisms in the social sciences. Okay, and I'm explicitly using that word, the idea of causal mechanisms in the social sciences, and so on, because what the idea of mechanisms does is to actually incorporate, right? And I will be fixing again on one figure for our purposes and won't be going into the details of it. Elster, Jon Elster, and I will explicate his idea of mechanisms, and in fact he speaks of intentional mechanisms and non-intentional or causal mechanisms, etc. And we will see what Elster has in mind in making those distinctions that he does, right? But before I move into mechanisms, I think we'll have to engage with a very important distinction which has been instituted in the philosophy of social sciences between reasons and causes. Why the distinction is important? Okay, what is the context in which that distinction takes shape? Okay, what are the implications of? What are the drawbacks of conflating reasons and causes? What are the benefits of instituting a distinction between reasons and causes is something that we will be engaging with in the context of these lectures, right? Any initial clarifications to this ground that I have outlined for you, and I've outlined it in fairly detailed manner? Are there any clarifications? People say we come up against a wall, right? I mean, online teaching, particularly like this, you really come up against a wall. I mean, in a physical classroom, students may keep quiet, etc., but they're all there, and you're reading signs and signals that that are part of the general rhythm of the classroom, and so on, right? But I'm meaning this as a joke. So, any clarifications? So if there are no, I will proceed further. So let's move into reasons and causes, right? Okay. Now, I mean, we cannot deny, right? Nobody can deny that an important part of the social sciences has to do with examining the actions of actors or agents, and also a lot of social science involves grasping why people act in a particular way. Why do people choose to act in a particular way? And in trying to address why people choose to act in a particular way, social science tries to identify the reasons for their actions, right? Etc. So nobody can deny that reasons for acting is clearly a key unit of subject matter for the social sciences in their explanatory and interpretive endeavors. So you're examining the actions of agents and grasping why they choose to act in the way they do. Okay, and in grasping why they choose to act in the way they do, you're also identifying. Social science is also identifying the reasons for their action. Reasons here within quotes. Okay, so concepts of agency and intentional action. Okay, and how to grasp such phenomena of agency and intentional action stand, I think, at the intersection of extremely interesting themes in the philosophy of social sciences, right? Etc. And if you read the Risjord reading that has been shared with you, as indeed Roth reading that has been shared with you, you will get a further sense of what I'm hinting at, right? Okay, so you find that these questions of intentional actions, the question of agency, right, stand at the intersection of very many deep questions in the philosophy of social sciences, right? Etc. And I've also, in the prelude to PPT4, I've already given you some demarcations about what the traditional philosophy of social science consisted in and what are the kind of newer preoccupations that dominate the philosophy of social sciences. And it is the newer preoccupations that dominate the philosophy of social sciences that I'm giving you a sense of, both in the context of Taylor's essay and also in the context of in the context of some of the issues discussed in the context of Taylor's essay, and some of the further issues that we're going to discuss under this rubric of reasons and causes on the one hand and mechanisms on the other, right? Okay, so what does it mean to say that the study of agency and intentional action stands at the intersection of a variety of themes and engagements in the philosophy of social sciences, right? Now, I think it's important to recognize that once you treat actions of agents as fundamental, right, to the social sciences, and that a lot of the mandate of social sciences is to explain human actions, etc. Okay, now that definition of the orientation of social sciences directly engages the question whether intentional actions can be explained in ways which are familiar to the natural sciences, right, etc. So there is a stream of the philosophy of social science which uses the window into this study of intentional actions as a way of bridging the division between natural science and social science, that there is a way by which you can bring certain kinds of protocols of natural science into the study of the social sciences, which may devolve on a very different kind of subject matter, namely intentional actions, right? Okay, so I think it's important to concede this point that treating actions of agents as fundamental to the social sciences actually engages directly with the question of whether intentional actions can be explained in ways familiar to the natural sciences, And that's where the question comes up. And I formulate that in the handout in my PPT, that if intentional actions are taken to be the cause of action, okay, then the ground for drawing a parallel between natural sciences and social sciences is consolidated, right? Right? So if you subsume reasons for acting under a concept of cause, right? And because a lot of natural science is actually a reflection on cause, as it were, then consequently, if you subsume your notion of intentional actions under a concept of cause, right, then you're actually strengthening the natural science model being grafted onto the social sciences, right? Okay, so if you say intentional actions as causes of action, right, as causing the action, then then the parallel between natural sciences and social sciences gets to be consolidated or strengthened. Alternatively, and I think this is the poser that I'm going to make for you, if intentional actions are non-causal, right? Of course, intentional action, reasons for acting are important to engage with intentional actions. If you're engaging with intentional actions, you need to get at the motives, at the intentions of the subjects who are acting, what they say about what they are doing, their understanding of what they are doing, and so on. But if you believe that no, that is not sufficient to get at the cause, that's why if intentional actions are non-causal, okay, then a crucial aspect of social science can be shown to be unlike the natural sciences, right? And that's why it's not surprising that a lot of the philosophy of social science devotes itself, or at least devoted itself until recently, to this question of anchoring a new line of division between the natural sciences and the social sciences. Okay, that it's not only at the level of methods that natural sciences and social sciences differ, it's also at the level of the object of inquiry that the natural sciences and the social sciences have to heed their differences and so on, right? In fact, I mean, the point I've just made, that if intentional actions are non-causal, then a crucial aspect of social science would be to distinguish it and set it apart from the natural sciences. In fact, such a disposition actually underlay historically the tradition of the Geisteswissenschaften in Germany, right? And in the 19th century, even as positivism was thriving across the domain of the sciences, including the natural and the social sciences, you had a countercurrent in Germany, which was consistently anti-positivist, so to say, which in a sense has its anchors in this German philosopher, Wilhelm Dilthey, right? And what was Dilthey? I mean, in fact, Dilthey has this famous dictum, right? Nature we explain, but psychic life, I mean, human life or symbolic life, okay, we understand, right? Okay, and in fact, Dilthey argued that explanation and understanding, right, designate two different ways of responding to natural facts on the one hand and psychic facts on the other, meaningful facts, psychic or meaningful facts on the other, right? And so on. And that concrete experience, what we call concrete experience, can involve both these orders of facts, natural facts and subjective facts or moral facts or symbolic facts or interpretive facts, meaningful facts, right? Facts about meaning, okay? And that there is no way that you can address these non-natural facts through the methods of natural sciences at all, right? etc. In fact, Dilthey had argued that we respond to facts of nature by trying to figure out their causes and connections, okay? Whereas we respond to our life experiences occurring within ourselves and other individuals within a dynamic of understanding, okay? That's why he set up a polarity between explanation and understanding. It's not as though that the unfolding sociological tradition did not problematize that idea. In fact, Weber actually problematized that inheritance when he tried to argue that questions of explanation and are challenges that social sciences also need to consider, just as questions of understanding are also questions that natural sciences have to engage with, and so on, right, etc. But those are historical legacies, etc. But what one is saying is that I think I'm going back to my formulation that if intentional actions are taken to be the cause of action, and I'm using so there is a specific notion of cause operating here, okay, then the case for drawing parallels between natural sciences and social sciences gets strengthened. But alternatively, if intentional actions are non-causal, right, okay, then you're actually setting apart the social sciences from the natural sciences, right? Okay, now let me move ahead with this framing, etc. Right? Okay. Now, I mean, how do scholars who make the case that intentional actions, okay, can be taken as the cause of action, and therefore strengthening the parallels between natural sciences and social science? What is their line of argument? I mean, and I want to set this up, okay, and then raise questions, and then in that context, keep the distinction between reasons and causes in place, right? So let me look at those who argue for drawing parallels between the natural sciences and the social sciences, and on that basis argue that intentional actions can be taken as causes of action. Now, within this realm of discourse, often it is the idea of instrumental rationality, right? And I'm stressing this word, instrumental rationality, which is invoked, right, as the basic form of understanding human agency. If you have to study intentional actions, if you have to address agency, human agency, then a lot of human agency and intentional actions is configured by a notion of instrumental rationality, right, etc. Okay, okay. Now, so that's why those who are trying to establish parallels between the study of intentional actions and explanation in the natural sciences often invoke the idea of instrumental rationality to say that the essence of human actions, the essence of human agency, the essence of intentional actions is instrumental rationality. What is instrumental rationality, right? I mean, that there is a goal, right? Okay, and human beings always are trying to achieve their goals, right? So their actions are means. They will choose to act in such a way that their goals, are realized, right? So action becomes an instrument to realize certain kinds of aims or goals that they consider important or valuable or crucial for themselves, right? Right. That's why the idea of instrumental rationality implies that if an agent wants to achieve a goal, right, and believes that doing a particular action will enable him or her to achieve that goal, okay, then an instrumentally rational agent will do that action. I mean, that's what the argument goes, right, etc. Okay, Okay. In fact, a lot of social and economic theory, okay, has been developed to refine this idea of instrumental rationality, right? Etc. Okay, but I'm not going into the larger framework of social and economic theory that goes into refining the idea of instrumental rationality. I'm only taking the basic idea of instrumental rationality, and then I mean, whatever the refinements, the basic idea of instrumental rationality is something that we have to engage with, and the basic idea is that if an agent, okay, wants to achieve a goal, I mean, is keen to pursue a particular kind of a goal and believes doing a particular action will achieve that goal, okay, then so long as that agent is instrumentally rational, he or she will perform that action which will make him or her realize that goal, etc. Right? Etc. Now, surely there is a problem with this line of argument, right? Okay, and it's not as though the refinements in the notion of instrumental rationality has not taken this into account, right? Etc. Right? But let me keep that element, this latter part, aside. But let us raise certain critical questions about this idea of instrumental rationality, that on the basis of which certain parallels get to be drawn between the study of intentional actions and explanation in the natural sciences, right? When you're talking of explanation in the natural sciences, of course, there are different models of scientific explanation which are involved here, etc. In fact, in the predominant model of scientific explanation that is operating, namely the idea of laws operating. I mean, you can think about an event, and you can think about certain laws that underlie those events, right? Etc. And then try to connect the event with the underlying laws that inform that event, and then owe an explanation of the event, right? Etc. Okay. Although that's not the only model of scientific explanation, there are other models of scientific explanation as well. But the point is that there is a way. I mean, it's believed that there is a way by which you can explain actions with the same measure and finality that the natural sciences can address events in nature and so on, right? And that instrumental rationality, that human beings are instrumentally rational, is the underlying law, right? And I mean, that is seen as the underlying law or a law-like proposition, right? And through that law-like proposition that human beings are instrumentally rational, you begin to explain a range of their actions and so on. But surely there is something problematic about this, right? Okay, and I don't think I need to labor this point, and I'm sure it might have already struck you, okay, that while agents are beings who do act instrumentally, okay, and instrumental rationality can provide a framework for explaining their actions, right? Okay, surely the range of the actions, the full range of human actions and motivations and intentions cannot be captured by that univocal notion of instrumental rationality, right? Etc. Okay, so there is more to human motivation, human intention, agency than just that idea of instrumental rationality. I mean, we are not denying that human beings can be instrumentally rational, right? And a lot of their actions are instrumentally rational, right? But that the notion of instrumental rationality cannot accommodate the full range of motivations and intentions that explain action. I mean, I know that we are in the world of digital technologies. We are in the world of AI and so on, etc., artificial intelligence and so on. And surely there are greater refinements in the space of digital technologies and artificial intelligence, as indeed the idea of big data, etc., which clearly try to recognize this fact that there is a range of motivations involved and intentions involved, etc., and there is a belief, a self-belief that in these digital and big data technologies, to believe that no, we can get a measure of that, and so on, and arrive at certain kinds of full ranges of approximation for why people act the way they do, right? But you can still ask the skeptical question. No. I mean, is there a limit to even digital technologies? Is there a limit to even, say, these to artificial intelligence? However fine-tuned the technologies of artificial intelligence have tended to become in our times, right? And that's why what I'm saying here, also borders on that larger philosophical technological question. Incidentally, the philosophy of technology is a fascinating area of discourse, and I've read. I'm not going to name that student, but I'm sure he will know whom I'm referring to, because I think I've read one of the scripts which actually invokes parts of this, and in wonderful ways, right? And so on, right? So the key idea here, okay, is that human agents can act as much for instrumental reasons as for non-instrumental or expressive reasons, right? For instance, somebody may act for non-instrumental reasons or expressive reasons, like for a reason for solidarity, a need for solidarity, right? Or out of a spirit of cooperation, right? Or empathy, or orientation towards others, and so on. Okay, so you can have a whole range of motivations and intentions that can underlie why people act the way they do, while yes, instrumental rationality can also explain why they do what they do, right? But whether that captures the range of motivations and reasons for acting is a separate kind of a question. I mean, in the world of big data, I agree. I mean, the limit that one is posing is a rather naive one. I'm willing to recognize that. Okay, but I think what the world of big data also requires are interpretive tools, right? And in fact, some time back, I was reading, this wonderful surgeon. Cancer specialist surgeon Siddharth Mukherjee, who has this fascinating book on cancer and also on the gene, but he has a small TED Talk book on the laws of medicine, right? And he has this, and he, in the initial part of his talk on the laws of medicine, actually invokes the idea, because a lot of interventions in these new technologies is about health, medicine, and so on, etc. And a lot of products are being created in that space. You will find that there is a lot of data generated, etc. No doubt about it. But the interpretive tools that we bring to analyzing the data, right, okay, have certain severe constrictions. Okay, etc. So we do live in a world of big data, okay, but I think we also have to harness. I mean, even as our technologies are able to harness newer ranges of human behavior, or give glimpses of the ranges of human behavior, okay, there is a sheer limit to how the kind of interpretive protocols that we bring to be actually analyzing that data, because you actually have to analyze that data, right? And a lot of data analytics is built around certain protocols of analysis, but whether that is sufficient to break down the data that is there is a separate kind of a question. And I'm making this point because I think I got deeply inspired by one of the essays that has been submitted to me. Okay, and I'm actually directing these comments in that direction as well. But I think it's important to recognize, okay, that while human agents do and can and do act instrumentally, okay, whether the range of motivations and intentions can be captured, and I'm conceding that big data is capturing part of these ranges of motivation and intention, but the interpretive challenge can still remain, right? In fact, the interpretive challenge actually increases in the world of big data, right? Etc. So I think the interpretive challenge becomes a lot more complicated because human agents act not only for instrumental reasons, but also for they're also guided by non-instrumental, or we can broadly call them expressive, right? Reasons and so on, right? Etc. Okay. So what does this tell us about human agency, right? What does this tell about who we are as agents, right? Etc. Okay. How should this set of questions? That I have that is problematizing the idea of instrumental rationality, right? How should this orientation, which problematizes the kind of overreach of the concept of instrumental rationality, bear on our explanatory undertakings? This is an important question, right? Etc. And it is in this context that the distinction between reasons and causes begins to loom large, right? Etc. Right? Okay. And I think this distinction between reasons and causes has a bearing, on the question of human agency and intention, how human agency and intentional actions have to be conceptualized. Okay, that's why. To go back to the earlier question, what windows into causality over and above meaning and interpretation is required, right? Etc. And I think somewhere along the way, this distinction between reasons and causes seeks to concretize layers of that question, and so on. And please note, as I said, I've tried to contextualize this question also to the present, and the present is, I'm willing to concede, the world of big data, right? But the very fact that we have so much of data, right, implies that we actually have to refine our tools of analysis. And I don't think the refinement of the tools of analysis have kept pace with the kind of accumulated data that has come as part of our digital modes of existence and so on. But before I move ahead into this distinction between reasons and causes, are there any questions? I think I've been sufficiently lucid and provocative in presenting what I have, but are there any doubts or clarifications or questions that you would want to raise in this wake? I hope I don't have to confront the wall. There is always a benefit in asking all of you to switch on your videos and so on, but the recording will become so bulky that it might actually crash on your systems and so on. So I think it's always, but you can still talk.
Sir, I've understood, sir.
Yeah. When students tell Raunak, I'm don't take me amiss, I'm just joking, but it's a serious joke. If jokes can be serious, this is one. Namely, when students say I've understood, right? I ask them a further question. What is the significance of what has been said? How does it affect you? Right? How does it alter the frames that you have been working with? I'm more interested to hear that. Right? So that I can get a measure of the significance, okay, of an understanding. So it's one thing to understand. It's quite another to grasp the significance of that understanding, because it is the grasping of the significance of that understanding that begins to alter your frames, right? So have I provoked you?
So by understanding at this point, I mean a very the risk of I don't want to speak for anyone else, but by understanding, I mean a very facile level of understanding. But I would like to like process it before I make any
Okay.
you know
Okay, that's fine.
yeah.
That's fine. I mean, but unfortunately, processing takes hell of a lot of time.
But by understanding, I mean a very facile level of understanding.
Right. No, right. No. Are there any other? I mean, please feel free. I mean, please. I mean, I can actually invoke names on the wall and ask you, okay, what do you think Anvesha, or what do you think Anu, or what do you think Komali, or what do you think Rose, what do you think Nikhil, etc. But I don't want. I mean, y'all are grown ups, so surely I don't need to pester you with individual attention. Any questions? Any clarifications? Any doubts? Okay, so I mean, I think I need to be more patient. I agree. But
Sir, I have just one question, sir.
yeah, yes, Ravna.
You mentioned Dilthey made the distinction between understanding and explanation. So, could you just recommend some texts that I could go through to to look at that part? But Dilthey has done that.
No. I mean, there is a lot of work on that explanation versus understanding, right? In fact,
Weber has probably written something about Dilthey, hasn't he?
Sorry?
Weber has probably written something about Dilthey's.
No. Weber, Weber doesn't. Weber attacks the wider tradition, right? What he calls, I mean, this Kantian, the neo-Kantian inheritance that is so much a part of his oeuvre, as it were, right? And Dilthey is also part of that neo-Kantian trajectory, etc. And I think there is any good reader in hermeneutics, right? In hermeneutics, I remember as a student reading this reader put together by Joseph Bleicher, Bleicher. Joseph, Josef. I mean, that's the spelling, Josef. Bleicher, Bleicher, right? And he has a lot of works on. Yes, that's right. He has a lot of work on hermeneutics, etc. And he engages with a lot of the ground of Dilthey, because there is no way by which you can, invoke the hermeneutical tradition in the social sciences and not play with the ideas of Dilthey, etc. I also would recommend, some of the work of Anthony Giddens, which covers some of this ground. I mean, you can read his book, but unfortunately, that book is not accessible in many places. It's called Studies in Moral, Social, and Political Theory, and he has a long essay on positivism and its critics, right? And if I'm not mistaken, it features in some of his other books, but I can't recollect which of the books in which that essay is collected. But you read his New Rules of Sociological Method, you will get some further indices to this ground. Of course, you'll also expose yourself to a wider framework of ideas. Bleicher would be a very context-specific introduction to the tradition of the Geisteswissenschaften. And Dilthey belongs to that.
Sir, thank you, sir. But could you just mention the name of Giddens' first book that you mentioned, that you said that is not
Giddens,
available. First book that you said is not available. The
Studies in Social and Political Theory.
right, right. All right. Thank you, sir.
You can check it out in any library, etc. And it's called Studies. It's an early book of his called Studies in Social and Political Theory. It's a collection of essays, and this is a very long essay called Positivism and Its Critics. Any other questions? Okay, so let me now, having given you a certain background in the context of which the distinction between reasons and causes becomes relevant, right? And clearly, once you institute a distinction between reasons and causes, you are, in a manner of speaking, willy-nilly also arguing that the natural science model has its limits, right? Okay. And so on. So this attempt to draw parallels between natural sciences and social sciences yields certain limits, and consequently you begin to explore another dimension that actually social science involves a realm of negotiation of objects that are different. And that the explanatory paradigm that underlies the natural sciences may not sustain itself, and that the explanatory challenges in social sciences are different, right? I mean, there are explanatory challenges in these natural sciences as well, and deep ones at that, but the explanatory challenges in the social sciences can be different, etc., right? So let me in this context move into this distinction between reasons and causes, right, etc. And I'll actually kind of wind up my lecture partly through this, where I will institute the distinction and leave it at that and trace out its implications in the next class, right? Okay. Now, as I say in the handout, many philosophers and social scientists have actually highlighted the problem of equating reasons for action with the causes of action, right? So they have clearly argued that reasons, so when you're engaging with human agency, you cannot avoid the question of reasons for acting. Okay, but reasons for acting may not be sufficient, to involve in an explanation and interpretation. You need to also engage with the non-intentional dimension or the causes of action, and so on, right? Okay. Now, in fact, one of the things that many of these philosophers and social scientists point out, is that if you equate reasons for acting with the causes of action, right, then basically that undermines the contingency of human action, okay, and also the unpredictability of human actions, right? I mean, etc. And surely one of the hallmarks of human agency and human action is the contingency that underlies it, right? I mean, that actions, it's that every circumstance is a new circumstance, right? And human beings can respond to these every repetitive circumstance as a new circumstance, and therefore every instance becomes contingent, right? And because every event is contingent, is unanticipated, not a repetition of the same, consequently human actions don't repeat themselves, right? And unpredictability and so on. So many philosophers and social scientists have pointed out, not only that the notion of instrumental rationality is limited in the way articulated, there is a great degree of unpredictability that attaches to human actions, and there is a lot of contingency that attaches to human actions. In fact, in my own work, I've actually tried to think about this a lot more. And what does it mean to practice theory in the context of contingency, under conditions of contingency, etc. Is an extremely interesting and challenging question, and I think it's a question which I think must remain the focal point of all our efforts to fuse theory and methods, that you're seeking to engage with contingency and unpredictability. Okay, but then contingency and unpredictability does not necessarily mean that every circumstance is a new one. I mean, so there are moving ratios of old and new in any contingent event, right? Okay, and even unpredictability can have an underlying pattern, and so on. And in the age of big data and artificial intelligence, this is the key presupposition that is underlying. I mean, it's not as though big data and AI doesn't recognize the contingency and unpredictable nature of human actions, but it is saying that even in the wake of contingency and unpredictability, you can still get certain measures of consistency, of pattern that underlies action. But that's a separate line of argument. So the point is that equating reasons for acting with causes of action is a problematic maneuver, right? Etc. Okay. In fact, and I refer to Risjord and in my handout, and the details are there in his reading that I have circulated. Risjord points out that there are two important differences between reasons and causes, right? And incidentally, in highlighting the difference between reasons and causes, he actually draws on Peter Winch, right? Okay, and argues, even as Risjord draws on Peter Winch, he also further argues. Risjord further argues. That treating the idea of instrumental rationality as a cause of human action, is to misunderstand the very notion of reasons for action, and so on, right? And so I think it's important to allude to this distinction, right? Which in a sense is the basis of Peter Winch's work, called The Idea of Social Science and Its Relation to Philosophy. Although Peter Winch will pull it in other kinds of directions, there is a context and point of reference that is there in Risjord, which enables us to pull it in directions that we choose to do, right? So what are the two important differences between reasons and causes to treat the idea of instrumental rationality as the cause of human action is to misunderstand the very notion of reason of action, and that therefore you need to keep the reasons for an action apart from the causes of an action. And that's why Risjord points out the idea of instrumental rationality is not a descriptive notion, right? I mean, it is a descriptive notion that human beings are essentially instrumentally rational. In that sense, you're approximating to an aspect of human nature, right? It is natural for human beings to be instrumentally rational, think about their interests and so on. But there is also a certain strong normativity that underlies that acknowledgement. And the first point that Risjord makes is that the idea of instrumental rationality is not only descriptive, it is actually strongly normative, right? Etc. And what does he mean? What does Risjord mean by this? That the notion of instrumental rationality says or indicates what a human being ought to do, right? It says what a human being ought to do not what he or she will do, right, etc. Okay, that's why a norm or a rule for action, what you should be doing, what you ought to be doing, etc. Okay, cannot be confused as the cause of action, right, etc. Right, so there is the idea of instrumental rationality is this allusion to human nature as being instrumentally rational is actually a very normative idea indicating ways in which human beings should behave or ought to behave rather than a description of what they will do and so on, right, etc. So the first problem with confusing reasons and causes is that it negates the idea that the notion of rationality, even instrumental rationality more specifically, is a very normative one. It's not a description of action. It's a suggestion or a guideline for how human beings should behave, etc. So reasons and causes should be kept apart for that reason, right? The second reason why reasons and causes should be kept distinct is that, as Richard points out, a lot of social science is a form of translation, right? Okay, right. And as a form of translation, because any translation presupposes an original script. There is something original, and you're trying to translate that into something else, right? So there is some originary source that you're seeking to translate, right? So if social science is like a translation, okay, then inevitably within social science, explanation and description, there is a movement between two sets of languages or concepts, right? On the one hand, scientific concepts, okay, and lay concepts, right? So in social science, you are trying to translate lay concepts into scientific concepts. And there is a back and forth movement between the concepts that people hold and the concepts that are a part of the repertoire of social sciences, and so on. So there is a translation, a movement back and forth between two sets of languages or concepts, right? That's why we speak of a double hermeneutic in social science, right? That you're moving back and forth between lay concepts and scientific concepts, right? You're trying to translate lay concepts into scientific concepts, and scientific concepts feed on lay concepts, but then also try to move beyond, right? So the presupposition here is that even science is a form of, natural science is a form of translation, okay, but there is only a single hermeneutic involved, and the single hermeneutic is the language of science itself, right? It overpowers the understanding of reality and so on, right? So the clear, this is another reason for why reasons and causes should not be confused, right? Etc. And they need, the reasons for acting, okay, should be addressed, but they do not constitute the causes of action. Therefore, you have to address the cause of action. You will have to have other tools fashioned within social science to address the causes of action, and the reasons for acting may not constitute causes of action, and so on. Okay. So I think the problem becomes even more acute in the social sciences because in the social sciences, the subjects and objects of our inquiry have their own understanding, right? And ways of thinking and representing their actions, okay? And they always constitute first order concepts. So the concepts that people have about why they act they do, their reasons for acting are definitely constitute first order concepts, which include individuals' reasons for acting. But then social science is also about second order concepts, which are social scientific, Okay, and that second order concepts must make a reference to first order concepts, and so on. I mean, in phenomenology also, if you read Alfred Schutz, he will speak about typifications, right? I mean, that not only are human actions typifications, there are also something second order about social science concepts, where you begin to typify typifications that are part of making sense of the world that human agents are involved in, and so on, right? Okay, so that's why these first order concepts include the individual's reasons for acting, whereas the second order or scientific concepts do make a reference to them, but they are not reducible to the former, right? That's why it's important to distinguish between cause. The reference to cause need not make any reference to meaning or motive at the level of the agent. In fact, I've already signaled this through Weber. Weber was actually gesturing at this when he argued that if the goal of social science is the interpretative explanation, right, then adequacy at the level of meaning, at the level of the actor, okay, is important, okay, but that is not the only level of adequacy that social science must aspire for, or an interpretive explanation of human behavior should aspire for. There is also what Weber called as causal adequacy, right, etc. And that's why Weber actually speaks about two levels of adequacy, which in a sense combine interpretation and explanation. Interpretation in terms of motive, reasons for action, and explanation in terms of a concept of a cause. Of course, he had a very different idea of causality, or rather a very multi-dimensional concept of causality, which invoked a lot of historical resonances. But I think there are some other important registers that are crucial in this light. So these are the two reasons, I mean, two important grounds for distinguishing reasons and causes. And that any interpretive social science must adhere to the protocols of this distinction between reasons and causes. I will take this up a little further in the next class, and so for the moment I will suspend this lecture and take it up further for discussion in the next class. That's next Monday, right? Any questions for the present? Okay, that's done. So let me just switch off the recording.